let's jump right in. Today, we're going to talk about something pretty powerful. It's a philosophy about society, about freedom, and really, about what it means to be an individual. We're going down a path that kind of pushes back on everything we're told to just accept. This is the path of the rebel.
So, the source material we're looking at kicks things off with this line. And it's simple, but man, it's profound. It really sets the stage perfectly, you know? Because if you want to understand why anyone would need to rebel, you first have to get a handle on this strange, kind of contradictory situation we're all in.
So what's the big problem here? What's the issue we're trying to solve? Well, according to this way of thinking, it's the idea that we're all living in this invisible prison. From the moment we're born, we're being conditioned by society in ways that keep us feeling unfulfilled, controlled, and, when you get right down to it, a long, long way from who we really are. And check out how subtle these controls are. The idea here is that society doesn't need actual iron bars to lock us up. No, instead, it uses things like the heavy weight of family responsibilities, right? Or this deep-seated fear of going against the government. And what about the constant pressure to play a role? You know, be the perfect employee or the ideal parent just to make a living and get some respect. It even manages to convince people of this really bizarre idea that suffering is somehow a good thing, that it makes you spiritual. You put all that together, and you've got these invisible chains that are designed to keep us so busy, so burdened, and frankly, so scared that we never even think to question the whole system.
And this stuff goes deep. I mean, right down to our emotions. Take a look at this example from the text. For men, the message is, it's not manly to cry. You have to be strong, like you're made of steel. But for women, the message has often been the opposite, that crying is what weak, feminine minds do. It's almost encouraged. So you see, both sides get trapped in these really rigid, totally unnatural roles.
And you know, this isn't just some abstract psychological game. There are real, tangible consequences. So what's the result of this one specific piece of emotional conditioning? The source points to something pretty startling. Because women aren't conditioned to hold back the emotional release of crying. They live, on average, 5 years longer than men. Let that sink in. 5 years. That is a huge biological price to pay for playing the part of being made of steel.
And this quote just nails the psychological cost, doesn't it? You play these roles for so long. You're the stoic man, the good son, the respectable employee, and you do it for so long that you completely forget you're even acting. Slowly but surely, you start to believe that the mask is your real face. And the real you, your authentic self, just kind of gets lost in the performance.
Okay, so if that's the prison, then what's the key to getting out? Well, the text proposes a really powerful answer. It comes in the form of a new kind of person, the authentic rebel.
Now, this is super important. The rebel we're talking about isn't just some teenager breaking rules for the fun of it. No, the authentic rebel is someone whose actions come from their own inner truth, from their own conscience. It's like they've found their own internal compass, and they actually have the guts to follow it no matter what anyone else thinks or says. But we've got to make a really critical distinction here. There are two types of nonconformity. You've got the authentic rebel, who acts from their own center and tries to create something positive. And then you have the reactionary. This person is just, well, reacting against the establishment. Their actions don't come from a place of inner freedom, they come from a place of opposition. And what that means is, they're still being defined by the very system they claim to be fighting. It's like that guy who apparently walked backwards across New York just to get attention. He wasn't free, he was just doing the opposite.
So the mindset of this rebel is a total 180 from the anxious, security-obsessed way most of us are taught to live. The rebel gets it. Life is fundamentally insecure. There are no guarantees. And because they accept that, they can live with a sense of playfulness, a sense of humor. They're not bogged down by all the seriousness. Their energy is creative. It's focused on building something new, not just on tearing down what's old.
Lao Tzu is held up as the perfect example of this. The story goes, the emperor asked him to be his prime minister, and Lao Tzu just refused. He said something like, "Our conclusions will never align." Why? Because the emperor had to follow the rules of his ancestors, the established traditions. But Lao Tzu, he could only follow his own inner light, his own conscience. And that is the very essence of the rebel.
When you start living this way, it's like a whole new perspective on reality just clicks into place. The rebel stops seeing the world in black and white. Instead, they embrace the entire spectrum.
Think about it. For centuries, we've been taught that there's this big conflict between matter and spirit, right? The body versus the soul, the outside world versus the inside world. But the source we're looking at says this is a totally false division, and it's a division that has created, in its words, a schizophrenia all over the earth.
The rebel understands you need both. Sure, man cannot live by bread alone, but you can't live without bread either. They're just two sides of the very same coin. There's a great little parable in the source that makes this crystal clear. Imagine there's a huge fire raging through a forest. In the forest, there's a blind man who can run and a lame man who can see. On their own, they're both doomed, right? But what if they work together? The lame man gets on the blind man's shoulders. Now, one can see the path and the other can run it. Together, they escape the fire. That's it. That's the synthesis of matter and consciousness working together. Now, this whole idea of combining our inner and outer worlds, it also requires a pretty radical shift in perspective. To really get it, we need to zoom out. I mean, way out. So let's start with this number, 186,000. That's how many miles light travels in 1 second. Just let that sink in for a moment. Okay, so you're traveling at that insane speed, and it would still take you 4 years, 4 light years, just to get to the nearest star to our solar system.
And get this, in the known universe, there are at least 4 million stars like our sun. So when you put it in that cosmic context, all our little earthly worries, our dramas about getting a promotion or making sure we're seen as respectable, they suddenly seem kind of tiny, don't they? Almost absurdly small.
There's another great story that captures this humbling, kind of funny perspective. A priest dies and arrives at the gates of heaven. St. Peter is there and asks him, "From which earth are you coming?" The priest is confused, and Peter says, "Give me the index number and I will run to the library to find out." The idea is that there are millions of Earths, millions of inhabited planets. The priest is just stunned. His whole world, his entire identity, doesn't even have a proper reference number in the grand scheme of things.
So where does all this lead? What's the ultimate goal of this rebellion? Well, it's something huge. It's nothing less than creating a whole new kind of human being and a whole new world.
And a new world like that is going to need a totally new approach to spirituality. The source argues that what we call organized religion has mostly become a bureaucracy, a kind of marketplace that actually kills the truth it's supposed to protect. The rebel instead embraces a personal religiousness. It's an inner experience, something as private and as unique to you as falling in love.
In this new vision, the whole idea of what a saint is gets completely flipped on its head. It's not about punishing yourself or rejecting the world anymore. No. The saints of the future are the creators, the people who celebrate life in all its messy, beautiful richness. They're the poets, the painters, the singers and dancers. They're the meditators, the ones who are truly awake and conscious.
And this really is the powerful conclusion. The old way of being human, that conditioned person, is obsolete. It's a dead end. It's brought our world to the brink of destruction. The rebel, the person who lives from their own awakened consciousness, represents the necessary next step in our evolution.
So we're going to end with this final, really provocative question from the source. And it's one that forces you to look inward and ask yourself, are you just playing a role, or are you living from that authentic, uncompromising, rebellious core? I guess the real question is, are you truly alive?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are stepping into some really radical territory.
We really are.
We're not just analyzing sources in the usual way. We're looking at a set of ideas so challenging that they basically confront the entire foundation of how we've built our societies, our religions, everything for thousands of years.
That's a perfect way to put it. The source material we're diving into, this collection of philosophical discourses, it's all centered on a concept they call the rebel.
And it's not a gentle critique, is it?
Not at all. It's a manifesto. It just dismisses almost all of history's big attempts at change, political revolutions, spiritual movements. It calls them all just utter partial failures.
Okay, so let's start there. The diagnosis. We begin with a crisis, right? The sources define it as a really deep-seated spiritual and societal failure.
Exactly. And they argue this failure has left humanity in this state of, profound collective misery. It's hurtling us toward what they very dramatically call global suicide.
It's a heavy term, but you can see the logic.
You can. They basically contend that unless we enact a solution that is so radical, so completely discontinuous with everything that's come before, the future, and they say this quite literally, has come to an end.
That's a terrifying premise. But it really forces the question, doesn't it? If all the old solutions, democracy, communism, organized religion, if they haven't actually worked, then what's left? What is the path forward?
And that's where the blueprint comes in. The material offers this blueprint for what they call the new man.
The total rebel.
The total rebel, or, using this wonderful kind of poetic synthesis, Zorba the Buddha.
I love that phrase. We'll definitely unpack that.
We will. And our mission today is really to get to the heart of this figure. We need to understand the Source's incredibly harsh critique of power, of our own psychological structures.
And why all these past revolutions just failed at the hands of their own leaders.
Precisely. And then, most importantly, we need to explore how this synthesis of, the material world, the enjoyment of life, and the inner world, the conscious awakening, the Buddha part, how that combination creates the only viable path forward for you, the listener, and, well, for the whole species.
It's demanding stuff. I mean, it's asking you to basically shed every established idea you might hold about politics, morality, relationships, even how you process your own emotions.
Everything is on the table.
But stick with us. We're going to break down this call for total radical transformation into some really clear, memorable insights. And the first step on this journey, I think, is just accepting the Source's indictment. Let's dive into why humanity is described as being in such a crisis.
So the central diagnosis that the Sources offer is, well, it's exceptionally blunt.
No sugarcoating here.
No. The typical conditioned human existence is described not as, a beautiful expression of life, but as a curse upon the world.
A curse. Wow. And that's not meant as like a moral judgment, is it? It's more pragmatic.
It's entirely pragmatic. It's an observation of consequences.
A curse because of what this unblossomed state, as they call it, introduces into the world. It's not just about individual sadness.
No, it's systemic. It's the violence, the endless competitiveness, the jealousy, the lust for power and control. They argue that when this old man, this conditioned person exists, the world can't be a garden.
It inevitably becomes a war field.
The war field. The Source even argues that this state is so destructive, it actually forces man to fall below the animal level.
How so?
Because animals, they operate purely on instinct. There's a clean efficiency to it. But man operates on conscious malice and historical grievance. We hold on to things.
And this inherent lack of inner growth, this unblossomed existence, that's the engine driving all the misery then.
It's the engine. It's a state where the seed of your own consciousness is just buried so deep that no flower ever emerges. And this leads to a really profound tragedy.
It is.
When figures who have blossomed actually appear in history, names like Gautam Buddha or the mystic Kabir or even Jesus and Socrates, they aren't celebrated.
No, they're not followed in spirit. They're hated or destroyed.
Or maybe worse, they're co-opted. Their message is taken by institutions and completely neutered. It's turned into the very thing they were fighting against.
That's a really powerful insight. It suggests that the societal reaction to true spiritual freedom it's a kind of hatred born from insecurity.
Exactly.
I mean, if you, the listener, are living this unblossomed life, if the years are passing and, as the Source puts it, no birds come to make their nests in your spirit, it is so much easier to find fault with the one who has blossomed than to look at your own inner emptiness.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's far simpler to poison a Socrates or crucify a Jesus than it is to admit you haven't done the work yourself. It's a way of denying that real growth is even possible, because if you admit it's possible,
then you have to face the immense painful effort it would require from you.
And this foundational failure of the individual, this inability to achieve that inner transformation, is precisely why every single attempt at external revolution, political, social, you name it, has been doomed from the start.
Because they're trying to change the outside structure, the government, the economy, but they're being led by these same old men.
Men who still carry the seeds of anger and violence and that lust for power deep inside them. So the moment they actually get power, all those lofty philosophical ideals, they just disintegrate.
Okay, let's make this concrete. The Source provides some fascinating case studies. Let's start with Mahatma Gandhi.
Right. Gandhi, for all his monumental success in achieving Indian independence, is held up as a prime example of a leader whose idealism just couldn't survive being close to actual power.
And this centers on a specific conversation he had, right? With a journalist named Louis Fisher.
That's the one. It was about the future of the Indian military.
Right.
Gandhi's stated ideal was, well, it was radical, almost impossibly pure pacifism.
What did he say he would do?
He told Fisher that as soon as independence was won, he would order all military arms to be thrown into the ocean.
All of them?
All of them. The armies would be disbanded and sent to work in the fields and gardens to contribute to the nation's productivity. And if invaders arrived,
what then?
They would be welcomed as guests. They'd be told, you can also live here, just the way we are living. There is absolutely no need to fight.
I mean, that is the ultimate philosophical position. It's breathtaking in its purity.
It is. But the sources highlight this devastating contradiction. When independence was finally a reality, Gandhi completely abandoned that vision.
Not by fighting for it and losing, but running away from it.
Exactly. He refused to accept any post in the new government, despite having fought his entire life for the right to govern.
And the sources argue this was out of fear.
Yes, a deep, pragmatic fear. The fear that if he accepted power, he would immediately be forced to contradict his own ideals. How could he, a head of state, actually justify throwing the nation's defenses into the ocean when the geopolitical realities of the time demanded security?
He knew he couldn't.
He knew. He understood intuitively that the nature of power, even in a brand new democracy, demands compromise. And compromise, by its very nature, negates absolute philosophy. By escaping that responsibility, he revealed how even the highest spiritual principles get overridden by the simple mechanics of holding authority. Power attachment just crushes philosophy.
But wait a second, isn't that a bit of an easy critique? I mean, the man achieved independence for a nation of hundreds of millions. That required immense skill, strategy, moral leadership. Is the source saying that this one act of refusal negates all that, or is it a broader point?
It's absolutely the latter. It's a broader structural point. The critique isn't really about Gandhi the man, so much as what his dilemma reveals about the nature of the state itself.
I see.
The point is structural. Any organization built on idealism will immediately fail the moment it transitions from being a revolutionary force to a governing authority.
Because governing requires you to maintain the very structures you vowed to destroy.
The army, the police, the bureaucracy, all the old tools. The old man inside the revolutionary inevitably picks up the old tools. And we see this even more systematically in the case of Lenin and the Communist Revolution.
Okay, let's unpack Lenin's failure. This one moved beyond just personal fear into a kind of institutional betrayal, didn't it?
It really did. Lenin's original revolutionary ideal included completely dissolving the family unit. He saw it as a bourgeois construct, a source of oppression.
Radical social liberation.
The ultimate. But once the Communist Party solidified its power, that ideal wasn't just ignored, it was actively reversed. The new thinking inside the Politburo became chillingly pragmatic.
Which was what?
That if citizens were too individualistic, too free from these deep social ties, they would become dangerously independent and, well, very difficult to control.
So instead of dissolving the family,
They maintained it, but they weaponized it. The family unit, according to this critique, becomes one of the greatest traps society has ever engineered. It ensures man remains a slave.
how does it do that?
By burdening people with obligations. You have an old parent who needs care, a sick spouse, the relentless demand for your children's education and their future. These burdens consume all of your time, your energy, your money.
An individual who is so deeply tied up in those immediate emotional responsibilities, they don't have the time or the energy, let alone the courage, to challenge the government.
They can't. The family, which should be a source of love and support, is manipulated into a mechanism of social paralysis. It guarantees that the revolution fought for freedom only results in a new, subtler kind of enslavement.
So the devastating synthesis here is that these partial revolutions, whether they're political like Lenin's or even religious reforms, they're all destined to fail.
They have to.
Because they don't address the core pathology, the unblossomed consciousness of the revolutionary himself. Power, whether you run from it like Gandhi or institutionalize it like Lenin, simply reveals the sickness of the old man that's still lurking inside.
And this leads directly to the source's most radical call, the call for total discontinuity.
That sounds extreme. What does that even mean? Discontinuity from what?
From everything. The source states, very forcefully, that the future cannot afford any more of these partial revolutions or reforms. We're simply out of time. We need a new, completely unattempted experiment.
Discontinuity from all accumulated historical baggage, then.
Exactly, not just political parties, but the mental structures, the moralities, the psychological conditioning, the thousands of years of conflict that are literally embedded in our language and our thought patterns. The time for gradual change is over. The time isn't just ripe for a massive shift.
The source says it has almost come to an end.
It has. The urgency of this call is clearly tied to our current global crisis. The destructive capability we've achieved, nuclear weapons, global suicide, ecological collapse, all of this demands an immediate surgical break from the past.
We've reached a point where the old structure has basically erased itself out of existence.
And it leaves only one choice. Either the rebellious new man arises or nothing at all. Unless this total transformation happens, both inside and out, we're not just failing politically, we are quite literally marching toward a collective graveyard.
This indictment really forces us to look inward then and understand how these failures all stem from these fundamental crippling splits in how we see ourselves in the world.
Okay, so moving on to the next major critique. The sources highlight how we have fundamentally misunderstood some very basic human processes just by imposing these false dualities on them. Right. And one of the most fascinating examples of this is the separation we make between tears and laughter.
We're conditioned to see them as total opposites, aren't we? One is for sadness, one is for joy.
And the source argues this is a profound psychological error. It defines tears simply as an overflow of energy.
An overflow.
Just an overflow. They are a natural, vital release mechanism. If your internal energy, whether it's sadness or grief or immense joy or profound blissfulness, if it reaches a certain threshold, the system has to compensate.
And it expresses that release as tears.
Exactly. So crying and laughing are not contradictory at all. They're two sides of the same overflowing life force. We just misattribute the cause, assuming the flow must always be negative.
And this misunderstanding, this false duality, has been weaponized by society, hasn't it? Particularly through gender roles.
It has, with measurable physical consequences that the material says are confirmed by psychological research. For centuries, men were conditioned against weeping.
Right. Be strong, be made of steel, suppress.
And women, conversely, were sort of subtly encouraged to cry. Historically, the source says, because man wanted them to look weak, soft, dependent, reinforcing that feminine stereotype.
But there's a boomerang consequence to this suppression.
A profound one. The research suggests that women live, on average, 5 years longer than men.
5 years. 5 years of life potentially just linked to the ability or inability to process emotional release naturally.
It's staggering when you think about it. It makes you realize how deep these societal gender traps go and how they boomerang into actual physiological damage. The suppression men learned in order to appear outwardly strong and stoic may actually be what makes them less resilient.
It's an example of the old man's conditioning creating literal biological weakness.
Absolutely. Your emotional system is a closed circuit. If you continually bottle up that energy, grief, fear, even joy, it puts immense stress on your internal organs. Tears are nature's way of cleaning the system, both emotionally and chemically. The rebel, therefore, has to reclaim this emotional totality.
Allowing the overflow whenever it's source without slapping a label of sadness or weakness on it.
Exactly. And this tendency to impose these rigid artificial dualities, it also plays out on a global philosophical scale. It creates what the source calls the schizophrenia of East versus West.
Two halves of the world, each developing these massive philosophical systems, but each one choosing to deny one half of reality.
Let's start with the West, the domain of the mind. The mind is celebrated, and rightly so, for its incredible capacity in the objective material world. It gave us science, the Industrial Revolution, technology. It successfully unlocked the secrets of matter.
But its great failure was existential, isn't it?
It was. It encountered the inner world, the subjective experience of consciousness, of being, of self. And because the mind is a tool built for objectivity, it couldn't penetrate it. You couldn't measure it.
So rather than admitting its limitation, the West just denied the inner world entirely.
Called it impotence or dismissed it as a non-existent byproduct of chemical processes in the brain. The result globally is this immense outward material richness, but a crippling, devastating inner spiritual poverty.
Yeah.
A vacuum of meaning.
And then you have the East, the domain of meditation.
Right. And this approach had profound success in the subjective world. It dived deep into inner space, providing experiences of ecstasy, immortality, this oceanic unity with existence.
But the Eastern failure was a perfect mirror image of the West's.
A mirror image. Meditation is a tool for subjectivity. So when it encountered objective reality matter, economics, the physical world, it just denied it, called it Maya or illusion.
Leading to inner spiritual richness, a beautiful consciousness, but paired with outward material poverty and stagnation.
And this division, the source says, has created an atmosphere of schizophrenia all over the earth. Man is dual, matter and spirit. You can't live by bread alone, but you sure as hell can't live without bread either.
So the constant debilitating conflict of modern humanity comes from inheriting this cultural split. It forces us to choose between material success and spiritual meaning.
When the potential has always been there to be rich on both sides.
And to really put all of this human hubris into context, the source material brings in this humbling concept of man's insignificance in the universe.
This is essential groundwork for the rebel. You have to first understand your true scale before you can achieve any real transformation.
Our religious traditions really inflated our sense of cosmic importance, didn't they? The old idea was that Earth was the absolute center of creation.
The reason for it all. And the stars were just lanterns hung nearby, almost touchable, just for our benefit.
Science just brutally destroyed that arrogance.
Completely. We learned that our sun, which feels so massive, is 6,000 times bigger than the Earth, and yet it's just a mediocre star.
And the closest star to us is 4 light years away, which means the light we see from it tonight actually took 4 years to get here, traveling at 186,000 miles per second.
And the scale is just, it's mind-boggling. The universe has infinite stars, just continuously bubbling up from unknown origins. Cosmologists confirm that these stars are all running away from some unknown center at the speed of light. In that context, our Earth, our solar system, our entire human drama becomes, well, negligible.
The sources use a great little story to capture this feeling of cosmic humiliation. It's the anecdote of the priest knocking at the gate of heaven.
It's a fantastic story. The priest arrives full of his religious self-importance, and he knocks for 3 days straight. Finally, St. Peter just opens a little window, not even the main gate. And he says he hasn't even seen God in 2,000 years, simply because the space is too vast for God to be constantly checking in on every little sector.
And when the priest says he's from the earth, St. Peter is just completely unimpressed.
Not at all. He asks, "This won't do. What is the index number of your Earth? Which Earth? There are millions of Earths."
The humiliation is total.
It is. The priest, who represents that religious ego, realizes he doesn't even know the proper ID number for his own planet, let alone the grand scheme of things. He wakes up from the nightmare, cancels all his prayers, and decides it's much better to be alive than to face that kind of embarrassing heaven.
It's a narrative that just perfectly dismantles our religious arrogance. We have to drop this inflated sense of self-importance before we can create a new man who is actually worthy of the universe's true scale.
It makes perfect sense. You have to shed the emotional repression of the Western mind, the material denial of the Eastern mind, and the cosmic arrogance of the religious mind. Only once you've dismantled the old man's delusions can you even begin to look at the blueprint for the alternative. So the total rebel has to perform this ultimate intellectual and spiritual surgery, rebelling against both the East and the West, against the denial of matter and the denial of consciousness.
And the only way forward is through this absolute, non-conflicted synthesis.
Which is Zorba the Buddha.
It sounds like a philosophical fusion, but let's be really clear about what each part represents. Zorba.
That comes from literature, right?
It does. Zorba represents the embodiment of matter, the body, the pure enjoyment of the objective world.
The dance, the song, the uninhibited sensuality.
Yeah.
Just physical life lived in totality.
Exactly. And Buddha represents the soul, consciousness, the inward awakening, the ecstasy, the inner silence, the meditative awareness.
And the sources insist you can't have one without the other. Never. Zorba is the foundation, the roots in the earth. Buddha is the blossoming flower. One can't exist without the other.
So the core philosophy is that matter is real and consciousness is a higher experiential reality. The conflict between them isn't inherent.
You is manufactured by the past's partial visions. The new man enjoys both, choicelessly, without any guilt or internal division. You can be materially rich, you can meditate in a golden palace, because the gold isn't going to disturb your meditation.
Unless you're clinging to that old idea that spirituality requires poverty.
And that's the key clarification. The sources emphasize that the word Buddha isn't the personal property of Gautam Buddha. It's an adjective.
It just means the awakened one.
Right, so Jesus, Mahavira, Lao Tzu,
Yeah.
anyone who achieves that state of total awareness is a Buddha. Zorba the Buddha is just a new name for a new kind of human being, a new beginning that accepts the totality of life.
So now we have the internal synthesis. Let's look at the external definition. The source says the true rebel is a total rebel, and that's very different from what it calls the tolerated nonconformist.
That distinction is absolutely vital. Partial rebels, philosophical anarchists or political thinkers, people like Camus, Bakunin, Bukharin, they're often respected, even given awards by the establishment.
Why is that?
Because their rebellion is intellectual, or is confined to one isolated sphere. And because of that, it's impotent. The establishment knows how to manage and neutralize an isolated critique. It doesn't threaten the core structure.
So the true rebel can't live in compromise. Their morality doesn't come from outside, from commandments or laws or old scriptures.
No, it comes solely from an inner light, from consciousness. The argument is simple. If you are truly conscious, you cannot do anything wrong. You don't need a rule book to tell you not to steal. Your own awareness becomes the guide.
And this kind of religiousness has to be intensely private and personal.
It can't be organized. The moment you organize it, you institutionalize it, you create hierarchy, and you stifle the spontaneous individual flow of truth. The source calls organized religion poison because it demands belief and imitation.
And that destroys the originality you need for consciousness.
It does. And finally, the whole purpose of this rebellion isn't just to react against the past in anger, it's compassion in action.
A proactive effort to create a new world.
Yes. It's about being so aflame inside with truth and possibility that you become contagious. You create this wildfire of new light that actually moves humanity toward a Garden of Eden, instead of just reacting against the historical structures that built the graveyard.
This total transformation requires some radical societal re-engineering, though. The source starts with revolutionary economics and justice. And the argument that the very existence of currency is the fundamental flaw is, well, it's huge.
It is. The source calls money a miracle, but in a very specific sense. It's a miracle only because it uniquely enables infinite accumulation.
Right. If you accumulate perishable goods, wheat, milk, flowers, they rot.
You're forced to either share them quickly or use them. But currency notes, they never age, they never rot, they never diminish.
And this allows for the indefinite hoarding of potential value.
Which instantaneously creates the division of rich and poor. Money is described as the central mechanism that allows one person to claim unlimited resources while others starve.
So the rebel's vision is just remove all currency.
It's that stark. Remove all money.
How does the society even function without money as a means of exchange?
The commune, the community, fulfills everyone's needs. The source implies a society based on a natural exchange of labor and resources, managed by consensus. The fundamental needs for food, housing, clothing, education, they're guaranteed to every single member.
So when money, the ultimate tool for class division, is gone, nobody can become richer and nobody can become poorer.
It removes the root cause of economic inequality. The focus shifts from accumulation to utility and sharing.
That is a staggering ideal, and it moves directly into this new concept of justice as cause removal.
Yes, in a society where economic needs are met, the sources argue that the vast majority of crimes, stealing, violence, even murder, they'll just disappear.
Because crime isn't seen as just an individual moral failure that needs punishment.
No, it's often seen as hereditary or chemical or psychological. So true justice has to focus on removing the underlying causes, not just punishing the symptom.
The source brings up that striking example of the Chinese mystic Lao Tzu.
Right. He encountered a thief, and he decreed that the rich man, the one whose accumulation created the conditions of poverty in the first place, was the real criminal.
And the poor thief's crime was nothing.
It was nothing. The rich man was responsible for the economic system that compelled the poor man to steal. So, to have real justice, you don't throw the thief in jail. You remove the poverty that drove the act.
So the new society has to treat criminals like they're sick.
Exactly. If a person commits a murder because of a chemical imbalance or a psychological trauma or wrong conditioning, you send them to a therapeutic center, not a prison cell. Their dignity isn't destroyed. They are healed, understood, and rehabilitated so they can return to the commune as whole human beings.
This total overhaul just continues into the most intimate parts of our lives. Specifically, it condemns marriage as we know it and calls for new relationships and the end of sexual repression.
The critique of traditional marriage is severe. It's defined as a social precaution, a way to stop individuals from being too free and too rebellious.
And a structure that inevitably creates intimate enemies.
Yes, who live under one roof, constantly finding ways to sabotage each other's happiness.
We can all kind of relate to that sense of obligation overriding love in some long-term relationships. The source uses the example of the wife's headache technique.
Right. It suggests that women, who were historically deprived of social freedom and opportunity, use domestic tools like denying intimacy as these subtle ways to take revenge on their husbands for their own enslaved condition. Marriage as a contract forces two people to stay together even when the love is dead. It just traps both of them in misery.
And the sources identify the invention of the birth control pill as this huge but missed revolutionary opportunity.
A great missed opportunity. The pill decoupled sex from mandatory reproduction. This meant that intimacy could finally be free from that crippling fear of unwanted pregnancy. It should have instantly revolutionized relationships.
It should have allowed people to live together based on love alone, not on law or social contracts or economic dependency.
But religion and societal inertia just dust. They prevented that revolution. So the ideal being proposed is a society where relationships are free, temporary, and based purely on harmonious experience.
The source mentions Aboriginal tribes having these temporary, maybe 3-day relationships.
Yes, which allows for deep experience of intimacy without the long-term legal obligation. And the goal isn't chaos, it's quality.
So by allowing people the chance to experience each other fully before committing, they gain the wisdom to choose a partner with whom they are truly, deeply harmonious.
And the paradox is that the result of this freedom, in the long run, is that divorce becomes unnecessary. Adultery becomes virtually unknown, because the need for either is eliminated right at the point of choice.
This moves right into the condemnation of sexual repression. The sources fiercely condemns celibacy as this unnatural denial of the body's vital energy.
Arguing that it's the root cause of widespread perversion. Homosexuality, lesbianism, sodomy, and even modern diseases like AIDS.
What's the logic there?
The logic is that when a natural energy is blocked, it finds unnatural, often violent outlets. And the highest incidence of these perversions is seen in groups that are forcefully separated from natural relationships right at the peak of their sexuality. Monks, soldiers, and prisoners.
So, by trying to repress sex, society just makes people sexual perverts.
And the solution isn't indulgence without awareness, it's transformation. The source argues that real transformation doesn't come from denial, but through meditation.
Which allows that sexual energy to be transmuted or redirected into a higher spiritual energy, an opening of consciousness, instead of creating this bodily and psychological bondage.
So the blueprint is comprehensive. Economic freedom, individual dignity through therapeutic justice, and sexual and emotional freedom through authentic relationships, all guided by consciousness.
So this entire blueprint, it requires a completely new way of even seeking wisdom. It's the relationship of the learner, not the follower.
Right. The traditional religious model demands what the source calls spiritual slavery. The disciple has to surrender their individuality to the master. The rebel has to reject that completely.
The relationship has to be redefined
as that of a fellow traveler. A master is just someone who has walked a little bit further down the road. Their experience is like a map that might help the learner take the next single step.
But it's never an insistence that the learner just blindly follow.
Never. The emphasis is all on individuality and experimentation. You're not expected to be a believer or an imitator or a follower. You're a friend who listens and then experiments with the suggested inner work.
So your growth, your consciousness, your enlightenment, it has to come from your own internal investigation. You decide for yourself through your own experience what is right or wrong for you.
And imitation is just profoundly destructive to that process. The source uses a simple analogy from art.
Picasso, right?
Exactly. Even if a great artist like Picasso paints a copy of his own work, he would declare it not authentic, because it lacks the spark of that new moment of creation. If you are just copying or imitating someone else's life or wisdom, your own life will have no juice.
And we're cautioned very strongly against hiding our truth, which is another kind of self-betrayal. There's that wonderful joke in the source material about the man fighting so fiercely over 30 pence.
Yes. He's in the marketplace, just screaming and fighting over this paltry sum, and when he's finally investigated, it turns out he was terrified because he had 500 pounds hidden in his shoe.
He thought the crowd was after the larger sum.
And that man, the source says, is humanity. We fight these small, distracting public battles, these 30-pence issues, but we are terrified of revealing the true core of our being, the 500 pounds, our true ideology, our unique potential. We keep it desperately hidden inside the shoe of conformity.
Originality is difficult. It's terrifying. It risks being misunderstood. But it's absolutely necessary for an authentic life.
It is. Now, moving to the internal mechanism of change, let's talk about consciousness and the art of expression. The source makes this vital distinction that the act of enlightenment happens in silence.
It requires no chattering of the mind, not even a single word.
And this explains a historical phenomenon. Why so many enlightened people remain silent their whole lives. Like Meher Baba, who was silent for over 30 years. They could achieve the inner breakthrough, but they lacked the necessary instrument, a trained mind, to translate that wordless experience into language.
The silence of the realization couldn't meet the world of expression.
Right. So the ability to articulate that inner experience is almost accidental. If you happen to be a poet or a painter or a storyteller with a mind that's already trained in sophisticated expression, well, then you can use that tool as an instrument to communicate the mysterious and the unexplainable.
So articulateness is a bridge you build after enlightenment, not the cause of it.
Exactly. And the essential meditation that's recommended for this transformation, the fundamental key, is vipassana.
Which means
The word, from the Pali language, just means to look, or to watch, to witness. The source notes that Gautam Buddha basically eliminated thousands of complex meditation techniques and just kept this one single essential part: awareness.
the simple action of awareness. Watching your breath, watching your thoughts, watching your emotions. Just choiceless observation without judgment or interference.
This constant fundamental key of witnessing is the rebel's true religion and way of life. It's what enables the transmutation of those lower energies into higher consciousness.
But this path of total rebellion, it's inherently risky, isn't it? It requires overcoming fear, guilt, and misery.
Yes, true rebellion is described as scary. It's profoundly challenging, and it's reserved only for those with a lion's heart and true courage. The danger that's inherent in dropping all of your societal conditioning, it has to be accepted as the ultimate challenge.
And this connects directly to the necessity of living dangerously.
It does. Since security is ultimately an illusion, death comes without notice. The next moment is never guaranteed. You have to live always on a razor's edge.
And this isn't just about, climbing mountains. It's about the everyday emotional and spiritual risk of being authentic and original.
Exactly. Living dangerously makes life intense and total. You squeeze the juice out of every single moment to its entirety because you know there may not be another chance to experience it fully. The source suggests that a single moment lived in total intensity and love is far more valuable than an eternity lived in slavery to dead ideals.
We also have to address the surprising fact that people seem to cling to misery. If blissfulness is our natural state, why is misery so persistent?
The source says people cling to misery because it's familiar. It's the security of known suffering.
Right. The anecdote of the mystic who carried a bag of miseries for 30 years.
Yes. And when a master suggested he exchange his bag of known miseries for an unknown one, the unknown bliss, he refused. He was afraid that the new misery might be even worse. Misery isn't natural. Blissfulness should be universal. But we cling to what we know, even if it's agonizing.
This clinging, combined with that historical split between our natural impulse and the paralyzing weight of societal ideals, that's what creates the disease of indecisiveness.
That uncomfortable, stuck state where you are neither here nor there, just paralyzed by the internal conflict.
And the only solution is what the source calls the total surgery.
You have to cut yourself off completely from the past, all the borrowed religions, all the external moralities, all the inherited ideas, and the simple revolutionary statement that has to become the new religion is, easy is right.
Meaning you embrace your natural, spontaneous flow as long as it's guided by awareness. You come out of paralysis by trusting your inner consciousness.
Exactly. And finally, the inner path involves devotion and love, but beyond the idea of a simple relationship.
Right, the intense connection to a master or to a profound truth. It's not a path, not a traditional relationship. It's a love affair, purified to its ultimate state.
Which is the death of the personality, the dissolution of the ego. This devotion acts as a door, a bridge to the universal organic unity, where your small, isolated identity just dissolves into the vast ocean of existence.
The famous story of the Chinese emperor and the master really illustrates this idea that wisdom is situational, not just verbal.
It's a perfect example. The emperor, annoyed by the master's simple, unadorned appearance, drew his sword in anger, and immediately the master said, "Here opens the door to hell."
And the emperor, shocked by the master's composure and his immediate assessment of his own internal state, he puts his sword back, he's humbled and ashamed.
And at that exact instant, the master says, "And here opens the door to heaven." He created an actual existential situation to demonstrate that understanding dissolves the question. Heaven and hell aren't geographical places. They are states of consciousness, instantly accessible, based on the quality of your action and your internal state.
And this leads to the ultimate reconciliation of effort and waiting, the realization that enlightenment is subtle.
It is. Everything else, learning a skill, studying, accumulating knowledge, it all takes time. It demands gradual, deliberate effort.
But enlightenment is the one exception.
It's not a gradual process. What takes time is the preparation. The slow, patient process of learning that all your efforts toward enlightenment are, paradoxically, useless.
Because effort creates tension.
And tension prevents the total relaxation that's required for the breakthrough.
So the gradual work is really the journey toward effortless effort. The paradox is that if you can relax completely and drop all ambition and striving for just that one moment, the breakthrough happens in a split second, instantaneously.
Time is more than enough, because for the final step, time isn't needed at all. So we've journeyed through an absolute indictment of the old man. We've seen his failure in every sphere, political, religious, emotional, and how it's led to this state of global crisis.
We've broken down that schizophrenia of duality and I think really understood the necessity of a total inner-focused rebellion.
And the core of the solution is this blueprint of Zorba the Buddha, that synthesis of matter and consciousness, enjoying both without any conflict or guilt.
The rebel's identity is founded on consciousness as the only source of morality, proactive compassion as their political action, and just total authenticity as their way of life.
And the sources offer this really striking image to encapsulate the pervasive societal fakery that this rebellion challenges. Humanity is likened to a dog that's been accidentally left inside a temple.
A temple where the walls are lined entirely with mirrors.
Exactly. And the dog barks at its own millions of reflections, which of course bark back. It rushes one reflection after another, hitting the wall, splashing its own blood.
Convinced it's fighting this hostile crowd, when in reality it's only fighting its own confused, multiplied false faces.
The only way out of that temple is to stop fighting the reflections.
And this leads us to the final, really provocative thought that the sources offer. They suggest that every question you hold, every single inquiry you make, is fundamentally a confession of ignorance.
Right. And all the answers we gather throughout our lives, from books, from masters, from society, they're just borrowed knowledge.
And that borrowed knowledge acts as a burden, a kind of poison that keeps us from our true selves.
So true wisdom is only reached when you can genuinely and innocently declare, not as some philosophical stance, but as a state of being, I don't know anything.
And that transforms ignorance into innocence.
This state of consciousness, completely stripped of all borrowed knowledge, without any internal questions or conflicts, that is the answer.
So the question for you, the listener, the potential rebel, is this.
Do you have the lion's courage necessary to perform that total surgery? To dismantle your entire edifice of borrowed knowledge, to stop fighting the reflections and become utterly, dangerously innocent?